this follow-up question that I had related to the 10,000 hours, which is for an AI agent, for some kind of machine learning algorithm, is there a difference between these concepts of intelligence versus expertise, or are they kind of the same thing?
I do think there's a difference. I mean, obviously, it's kind of a matter of definition, but I would think of them as different because I kind of think expertise rides on top of intelligence.
Right.
So I
So
think, like, oh,
yeah, so maybe in your case with a novelty search algorithm, the the ability to do a novelty search, this kind of capacity for learning, that's kind of like an intelligence that you could say, for example, I'm oversimplifying this, but let's say a novelty search algorithm, you could consider
mhm.
that to be more intelligent than a deep reinforcement learning algorithm, or most of the common deep reinforcement learning algorithms. Like you could, because there's more capacity to learn. It could learn a broader set of things. It's so in that kind of sense, it's a more intelligent algorithm. But the expertise doesn't happen until it does some learning.
Yeah, I think that the spirit of that point I totally agree with. I think like you might get into some of the like the nuances of whether deep reinforcement learning today can rival novelty search from 10 years ago, and you might
Right,
say, well, actually, it does now do novelty search like things. We could get into kind of a like hair
right.
splitting argument about that. But I think like the general point though is that like the intelligence is latent in the style of learning that you have,
We
the ability to absorb things,
we
and
could
that's
just
like the
do
real.
how about novelty search versus like deep Q learning network?
Sure, sure. Yeah. I mean, but this also goes to the point that like a lot of what the points I'm making are very hard to quantify.
Yeah,
And they're almost subjective. Like if I have a style where I tend to move towards novelty and you have a style where you tend to maximize an objective, like how do we measure like the difference between me and you? Like in a way that
right.
like says I'm more intelligent than you. It's not completely clear. It's somewhat subjective because it's sort of like, what do you even mean by intelligence? But it's like, well, I think I have more higher probability of getting to interesting things. So if that's how we think of intelligence, then I'm more intelligent. But like someone could dispute that and say, well, that's not really what I think of as intelligence. But it's really what's more important, I think, is to grapple with the fact that like, yes, some things actually are subjective, and that doesn't mean that we have to ignore them. It's like maybe I can't give you a quantifiable way to prove that this way is better than that way. But look, it doesn't mean we can't discuss it. It's still really important for us to understand and grapple with these questions. And so I think it does get to this issue of expertise versus intelligence because this is relevant to like modern machine learning and some of the things that are being done with like large language models and things like that, where it's like we can inject a huge amount of expertise because we have the training data, but like underneath the hood, like the actual like intelligence, if we think of that sort of like the learning capacity and things like that, it's very alien. I'm not saying it's worse or better. I mean, we could argue
Mhm,
it's worse than human, probably is worse, but it's just very alien. And the
mhm.
implications of that are unclear because you've got this like high level understanding which is beyond a lot of humans. Like you could know more about like organic chemistry than most humans, but on this edifice that's like completely different and slippery. And so, like that underlying edifice, I think, is the thing that really matters because it's sort of just like saying, well, if I could get the brain of a 5-year old or a 2-year old or even 18-year old, like that's a place where I could build any kind of expertise, and it would be expertise that's like similarly solid to human expertise eventually. So I think we hope to eventually get that kind of intelligence on top of which would rest the expertise.